everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Firefighting Female. With me today is Suzanna Fitzpatrick, a friend of mine from the fire department. Hi, Suzanna. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Rhonda. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So today we're going to talk about surviving shift work in a family. And you and your family are the epitome of shift work because your husband, Glenn, is a DC firefighter.
Yep.
And I believe their shift is 24/72.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. And you are a nurse practitioner.
I am.
And you have a strange shift also.
Yep. I work 312s.
312s. Now, at home, you have two children, small children,
mediums,
many chickens, a dog, a new puppy to be.
Yep.
And yet you guys are the super family.
Don't forget 2 beehives and a fish.
2 beehives and a fish.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. So we got to figure out how this works and how you keep your family perfectly intact, happy, and healthy. So the first question is, I'm just curious, when you go to work and you come home and Glenn has had the kids for your entire shift, are they rowdy and rambunctious, or are they still the same kids when you left?
So my kids, have grown up in this life, so nothing has ever been different for them. I think it would be harder if, they're now 7 and 10, if we suddenly did this when they were 5 and 8. So they're sort of constantly been used to shifting and changing and things like that. But for them, we've had intermittent babysitters, but they always wake up with the parent. Very infrequently was a grandparent spend the night or a neighbor came over, but they were only a couple, people that they ever woke up to other than us. They did spend the night at grandparents' houses, but as those parents have passed away, typically they wake up in their bed every single day and they know somebody is home. And they know what our shift is. They'll ask the night before, who's home tomorrow? This is sort of in their radar of who's here in the morning? Are you here in the morning? My daughter always wants me to be home. She's very connected to me, but, I can do a French braid, and my husband, though, is doing his research and watching his YouTubes.
You do a ponytail.
Yeah. But, they're just used to that life. So, in the morning, if I'm working my 312s, I'm gone in the morning. I have to be at work at 6, and then I don't get home until, after dinner time. Dinner is always at 5:30. If my husband is on duty, it's between 5:30 and 6. If I'm on duty, I'm a little looser. But they're just used to the expectation. I think that we have made our kids schedule children, but they're happier to be scheduled children. I'm a firm believer that the best parent for your kid is you. So whatever works for your household works for you. And for us, having a sort of a schedule. My son wakes up like clockwork between 6 and 6:30 every single day. And then Glenn and I are just up, early bird anyway for that reason. Very rarely do we sleep a little bit longer than our kids. We're just sort of up and at them. And so, they're busy like everybody's kids are busy. And they sort of have the same routine regardless of who's home. Dinner between 5:30 and 6, then bath or something, a little bit of screens, then upstairs by 8. And so they're just used to it. And so when they wake up in the morning, I'm always there. I only work a couple overnights a month. So almost always if they woke up at night, I am there. And I think that they're just, the same as they always are. I'm definitely the fixer of the kid problems. So if there's like an injury or an ouchie or they need something or a bad dream, that's usually to me. We lovingly say like, oh, we don't want to get daddy. He's grumpy in the middle of the night. But, they're fine. And they're, I think, used to the consistency of always having one of us. So it works, for their favor and our favor too.
Now, how about coming home? When you come home, do you need to decompress at all and then go from nurse practitioner to mommy and wife role, or do you just jump right into it?
I'm pretty good at jumping right into it. I work in West Baltimore and we live in Montgomery County. So it's a, 30-minute drive on the way home. And then as soon as I walk in the door, it's sort of, dinner time is over. We're, because it's not me when Glenn gets off work, it's in the morning. So when I get home, Glenn has made dinner for me. I'm very lucky for that. So usually I like shovel food in my mouth because I'm so hungry. But if I have the opportunity to have eaten something throughout the day of my job, I'll quickly go upstairs, take a shower, and then come downstairs and eat. I don't want to miss any bedtimes. I don't want to miss a moment with them. So I'm happy to like get right back into it. I don't have a long reset time. So as soon as I'm home, I want to be with them. They're always my first choice. I think they know it. I definitely know that about myself. And then they go to bed at 8. So I only have a very short blip of time to be with them, and I try not to waste it.
So, most of our friends are either firefighters, police officers, or medical professionals. And I know just from the years and years of knowing people that some firefighters and EMS providers need to come home after a shift and decompress. Some take an hour, and it's just the family, dynamics. They'll come in, maybe say hi, go upstairs, take a shower, change clothes, just take a minute to breathe, and then after an hour or so, come down and be mom or dad, husband or wife. So for Glenn, when he comes home from a 24-hour shift, who knows? He could have been up all night. Who knows what kind of calls he ran? Does he just jump into the role of dad and husband, or does he need time?
I think our sort of motto in our family is like set each other up for success. So for Glenn, if it's his Monday, Friday week, the Tuesday morning when he gets off, he'll go work overtime, usually till the afternoon. And then I try to set him up for success. So, I'll pick up the kids and then he can take a shower and get it together. Or if I need, I have to do something and he needs to pick up the kids, I'll say, I need you to do it at 4 o'clock. I mean, we're a really good divide and conquer family. I do, if it's a weekend, then I don't work a lot of weekends. So if Glenn is coming home Saturday morning, I will have, schedule the kids for music, or if they have baseball or softball or something, that I will give him a couple of hours to, take a shower or whatever. But, we're not big nappers in terms of things like that. I think that we both really recognize that although we're incredibly committed and do both really like our jobs, there are jobs. Our life is our children and our family and Glenn's Jeep business and me teaching. That's our life. And so, reconnecting and sort of recognizing that and trying to, okay, ready, set, go. And we'll just push through it, because for us, like seeing the happiness of our kids and seeing the happiness of his mom is what, makes it worthwhile.
So, is there special time that the kids have with you that they don't have when Glenn is there, and vice versa? So maybe it's just us and mom tonight. So here's what we do that's special. Like, do they sleep in the bed with you when Glenn's not there?
Oh man. So we definitely have major mommy time. I really do recognize that, my son is almost 11, my daughter's almost 8, that in, 1 second they're going to be big and not going to want to hang out with us and be with us and snuggle with us and things like that. And I know that, and I'm thrilled with every moment that they get bigger because they're so happy. But, I love them sort of young and snuggly. When it's on mom duty, we will like, okay, let's do movie night and charcuterie, which, my daughter then and my kids make charcuterie, which will be like trail mix, chips and salsa, salami, crackers, cheese, maybe some sort of like Trader Joe's corn dog, M&Ms, it's a little, mosh posh of stuff, dumplings, hard to say. And then there'll be like veggies, some sort of fruit, and they have a ball doing it. And then we put on a cooking show, which is really fun, get it under the covers, have have our charcuterie snacks, which if you look at the definition of charcuterie is only meat.
Right.
The rest of it is, charcuterie by Page and Hunter. And then if there's no school, it used to be anytime daddy was at work, one kid got to be in the bed and then we'd pull out the twin and the other kid would be in the twin. But like if they have school the next day, I try not to do it. I really want them to have restful sleep, and, we'll stay up late and read and, tell silly stories or whatever. So only if there's no school the next day do we typically do that. And they know that. They definitely do get up more and try to like sneak in if Glenn is at work, and they'll just like slide under the covers and I, roll over. I'm like, you sneaky jokers. When Glenn's on duty, he grew up in a very traditional family of mom and dad who were both home at the end of the night, and they always had dinner at 5:30 together as a family, sit at the table, which is great. I grew up with a single mom and my parents were divorced, and my dad and my stepmother I was very close with as well, but we didn't have that. So I'm like, I don't need to sit at the table. The kids are so happy. We'll have like a little cuddle time. I mean, they love tradition and sort of the consistency of what time dinner is. But if it's Saturday, and we don't do this during the week, but if it's like Saturday night and, they don't have school, we'll definitely have, kid charcuterie, watch a cooking show, and then have cuddle time. It's nice.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the special thing Glenn does when you're not there?
Glenn is a really present, wonderful father and partner. I'm very lucky with him. I mean, we certainly are imperfect in many ways, but we do make a really good team. And, I would say that they do the fun things of, last weekend, Glenn and Hunter went four-wheeling, and Hunter was like, "Oh, can I ride with, Bo, who's Glenn's friend?" And Bo's like, "Only if you drive." And so there's my 10-year-old, strapped into a buggy going up a mountain. I'm like, oh boy. So they definitely have those fun experiences of, four-wheeling and camping, and they take the RV and go places like that if I'm at work or out of town, that's wonderful. They love doing those things. Glenn built them a go-kart, a couple of weeks ago that they zip around the yard, and, probably should be wearing a helmet, but are not. And I don't do that, which is totally fine. And so they're happy doing that stuff too.
Now, do you guys bring work home with you? For example, when Glenn comes in, does he say, "Let me tell you about these calls that I ran"? Or do you say, "I had this type of a patient and that type of a patient," or is that just separate from family?
I mean, I think we try to keep things separate somewhat. I think we both sort of feel like they have their whole life to recognize that things are so hard and troublesome, and, but it's okay to just sort of experience the joy of things. I mean, they've had a lot of loss. They lost two grandparents in 4 weeks a couple of years ago
Mhm.
during COVID, they were very, very close with. And so they have lost things and know that they have. Um, but, so we don't really talk about that kind of stuff. I mean, I work in West Baltimore, in a hard part of town, taking care of, low health literacy, a lot of the patients and vulnerable people. And I've worked there for almost 20 years, and I love it there. I'm never going to leave there. And Glenn had worked in Southeast for a long time. So I think we're both exposed to, you know, people who really, really need help and who have hard things happen to them. We try not to talk about too many of those things. And I certainly don't want my children to be afraid of the world yet. I mean, again, they have their whole life to feel bad and to have things be hard. But I definitely remember taking my son to preschool when he is like 3 or 4. And he's like, "What are you doing today, Mom?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to work." And he's like, "Mom, can you not send me any of those yucky feet pictures again to my iPad?" Sort of forgetting that my phone pictures and his iPad were connected because I take care of surgical patients. So I'm seeing yucky things all
Uh-huh.
the time. And he didn't even faze by it. So,
Wow.
they know about it.
Impressive. So if I were to ask them what they wanna be when they grow up, would they say a nurse practitioner and a fireman?
When Hunter was 5, he told us he wanted to be Billy Joel, which I'm thrilled about. And he plays 4 instruments, and he definitely is really musical and into beat and movement. I mean, he's really into baseball too. So I don't know exactly what he would pick. He loves cooking. He loves baseball. He loves science. He loves animals. I don't know. I think probably if he's first choice, he would have an animal sanctuary with 50 dogs, maybe fixing go-karts, playing, in a band, some combination. Paige is currently loving dance and singing, but she also is like my little nurse. I mean, my mom had half of her liver removed. She lived with us for 6 months, and she had a drain and had a big surgical wound and stuff like that. And if my mom needed something, or I needed to like look at her wound, or like it was during COVID, so I took out her drain, I took out her staples. Paige was like, "Oh, what can I do?" She put her little Doc McStuffin stethoscope on and was
Oh.
ready to help. And Hunter was like, "No, thank you. I love you, but it's gonna be a no."
Aw.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that they're both growing up to be these really interesting people, and I hope that we instilled with them that you can do anything, when we would figure out the means to get that done for you.
Well, you and Glenn have clearly figured out your family dynamics, and it works amazingly well for you guys. Now, for other families, it sounds like the key to child success and even adult success is consistency and routine. And knowing that although, Saturday night's gonna come along and you're gonna have some fun, in general, no matter who goes to work and who comes home from work, bedtime should still be the same, mealtime should be the same, routine should be the same. And that sort of keeps the kids together. And then family time is so super important too. And I know you both are tired a lot, I'm sure. But just being able to keep yourselves going as a family and supporting each other is huge, and allowing each other space if maybe you had a bad shift or if maybe you're exhausted beyond belief, recognizing those signs of your spouse, partner, when they come home to say, all right, mom, dad needs a few minutes. Let's just go do this. Even though you've been mom for the past 24 hours, you realize, hey, Glenn comes home and there's just something that's not right. Let's just go over here and give dad space until he's dad again. Does that seem to work?
Again, I go back to, the best parent for your kid is you. So for our family, that's what worked. My kids are really great. Like if I give them a list of checking things off the list and like I need to clean my fish tank and make my bed and start my laundry they will knock a list out of the park. But lots of kids are not like that. And that's totally fine too. I think what makes Glenn and I and our family life work so well is that we're cognizant that we are parents and we are spouses to each other, but we're also individuals. And so if Glenn says, hey, I'm going to go four-wheeling for the weekend, or I say, hey, I need to go have girlfriend time, or I want to go teach this thing, or I want to go do a podcast, or, Glenn says, I want to go to King of the Hammers for 2 weeks in California. Like we try to always say yes to each other because we know that when the other person is asking, it's a need. It's not a want. It's not like, oh, can I, go hang out? Like if Glenn is asking me to do something, it's not to ask my permission. It's how can we work out our schedules together to make it work so we say yes to each other. There's very few times that just something is impossible. We're like, it's just not going to work. There's just no chance. And that's few and far between. So we really identify to each other that if something needs to happen, we're just going to figure it out. And I don't know how we're going to figure it out because we don't have a babysitter. Most of the time we don't have childcare. We have a little bit of support, which I'm grateful for. But, we're both full-time parents and full-time workers. But if we need to do something, we make sure we do it. And I think that our kids would say that we are a happy, successful family because we, ask each other, even when I go to the store, guys, do you need anything? What are we doing today? What's everybody want to do today? Is there anything we need to add to the list? And that we hear each other's voices to say like, I need to do this, or I'd like to do this, or can we squeeze this in? And it's not always a yes, but we really try to have it be a yes.
So the key to family success with shift workers, obviously, respect for one another's positions, job positions, commitment to the family first, and the job is secondary, to make sure there's a routine, to make sure there's a schedule, to listen to each other, to support each other, and to understand when each other needs maybe a minute to take a break. And not just say, hey, I've been alone with the kids for 24 hours, you take them. Just let everything flow. Just be yourselves, family first, interact. You've been together for a long time. Most families have been together for a long time. You know each other well. You know how to act when each other comes home in a different mood. Any other advice for families?
Just wake up in the morning and be your best self. And your best is not going to be the same every single day. And that I think all four of us in our household recognize that like today's not going to be the best as yesterday, but this is what I got and it's going to be fine.
And it's going to be fine. And tomorrow's going to come.
And tomorrow's a new day. And we survived another one.
So we've talked about the dynamics of shift workers with children, but there's many families that don't have children. So let's talk about how a person on shift work can manage healthy friendships, can possibly taking care of aging parents, pets. I think for myself, when I think about coming home from a 24-hour shift, the last thing I want to do is probably engage in immediately being the person that says, okay, well, let's go out, let's go to lunch, let's have a schedule, let's do this, let's do this. For myself, I would say, let me come home, give me an hour to decompress, get myself acclimated to non-fire EMS life, and then let's start other life. I'm not going to say normal life because if we're in the fire service, we're not normal. So our other life. Do you ever feel that you don't have time for family and friends because you and Glenn are always on opposite shifts?
I think that, I've always prioritize my friendships with others. I don't have any siblings. My cousins we have a big age gap, so I'm not super close with them. So I have, only my friendships as my sort of family. My parents are gone. So, my girlfriends from nursing school, my friends from the rescue squad, have all been my friends for 20, 30 years. And we just do a great job that when we go do something at that moment, I'm like, cool, when's the next time we're hanging out? And so we've sort of trained ourselves to put a date on the schedule before we leave that initial date. Because otherwise it's like, oh, see you later. And everybody's busy, right? I mean, I
Right.
could say, oh, I'm the busiest person I know, but everybody is their own set of busy, whatever that may mean to them. And so my friend lovingly says that I squeeze the juice out of, every ounce of the lemon. And I do. I stuff my day full of stuff. And for me, that's fulfilling because then I feel like I haven't missed anything. Most people don't run that way. It's easier for me to go from the hospital to a thing than go from the hospital and come home and then go out to a thing. For example, like I worked today and then I came home and I folded a load of laundry, started dinner for the family, took care of the chickens, fed the dog, and then you came in and then I had to like bounce out of that role. So it's easier for me from a trajectory standpoint to go from work. So if I'm meeting somebody, I'd rather go from work to happy hour, work to dinner, just because I'm sort of already in the out, moving around mode. Um, Glenn is not as much of a social butterfly than me. I think, that a lot of that is gender norms. I think a lot of that is that who he is. He's perfectly happy hanging out in the garage, fixing, stuff for 4 hours. And if a couple of his buddies come over and hang out in the garage, I mean, then he's thrilled. He doesn't need to necessarily go out and do something. So, we're just, I think I'm a good scheduler. Sometimes most days we're overscheduled, but, I do a good job that if we see our best friends over our house, we put that on the schedule for the next time they're going to come over. Or if we, just do that, I think then it's just easier to stay connected. Glenn will say, honey, not everybody's as good a friend as you, because I do a really good job of putting people on the calendar. Because it's just easier for me. My calendar fills up like everybody's calendar fills up. So I think that's important to do. To stay connected to people, I think you have to, make an effort. Being married is a full-time job, taking care of children is a full-time job, taking care of cherishing your friendships is a full-time job. And so putting people on the list, and it doesn't mean that, I have friends who live far away that I don't see at all and we don't stay connected, and when we see each other it's exactly the same. But it would be even more wonderful if we saw each other more regularly and like put it on the calendar and made a point to like, this is going to be time I'm going to be with you.
Now, self-care for shift workers, we got to take care of ourselves too, because we got to go back and do the best job we can in every role that we have. So do you make time for yourself to be by yourself, or do you always want to be surrounded by people?
I'm pretty extroverted. I mean, I really do get a lot of fulfillment from being with others. I will say, though, I'm an avid reader. So every single night I'm in quiet reading by myself for 30 minutes. I mean, whether it's in bed with my husband, but, I don't have anything happening. I don't watch basically any television. So that reading time is helpful. I'm a pretty avid exerciser. I run a lot of 10-milers. I have a running buddy that I do that with. We're going to do number 12 on Saturday.
Wow.
I know we did, and started in COVID, that we did 20 10-milers in 2020.
Wow.
And then 21, we did 21. And then 22, we only did 10. And it just felt like such a waste. So we're like, all right, this year we're going to go back to 20. 20 is our sweet spot.
That is awesome.
And then, I like to, I have a Peloton treadmill, which I love, and we take dog walks and things like that. So I think we do a good job of sort of taking care of ourselves and, exercising or moving or doing the things that are important. But again, Glenn and I have always prioritized that, to say yes to each other if it's at all possible. And so before we had children, we did that. During children, we've done that. And I think that will always continue. And though, on paper or, from afar, you might think that Glenn and I are very different. Our lovely friend Carrie introduced us, said, you guys will get along for 5 dates, because we're both very strongly opinionated, but have many views that are different. But our core is the same: helping others, valuing our family, and, putting out good in the universe. So, if there's a way we can do that and take care of each other and connect with friends, we're able to do that.
I know Glenn's self-care is getting in the garage and working on the Jeeps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his happy place sometimes when he needs to decompress and be alone for a while.
I was also an avid camper and an outdoors person. I love the outdoors, but Glenn is thrilled if once a year he can go out for 5 days in the wilderness with a couple of his buddies, and there's no cell phones, there's no restaurants. They bring a shovel for, I'll leave you to your imagination. They pack their own food, and are just out there in the universe. And for him, that I think really centers him, and he's able to do that. And I'm thrilled that he's able to do that because he comes home a better version of himself.
And see, this is so interesting what you just said. He has something, I think, that people that are in the fire service sometimes can't separate from the fire service or from whatever they do for work. But to become a better person, a well-rounded person, there needs to be a separation, because otherwise you're going to get into your own head and your own space and just live the same exact fire service, fire service, fire service. So at least he and you both have different things in life that you enjoy doing that are completely different than what you do for your occupations and your children. And you have different identities that way too. So you're wonderful together, but you're also wonderful individuals.
Yeah, I would say that, I teach some classes and I tell people to like write down who they are, and lots of people write, mother, wife, things like that. But, I try mostly fill my page up with other things. I'm a runner. I'm an avid reader. I'm a loyal friend. I like to hike. I like to, things like that. And the things are just extra. Those things are who make me a good spouse and who make me a good mother and who make me a good nurse practitioner. So I think that we do a bad job of sort of, it's not being selfish or sort of prioritizing ourselves. It's those things make you better. So, don't forget that piece too.
Absolutely. So not to put anybody down that is fire, 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 because there are many people that are that and
Mhm.
enjoy that, and that
Mhm.
is who they are, and that's wonderful. But surviving shift work sometimes means when you come home to the family, be that family person and maybe keep that separate from fire, fire, fire all the time. So you are so very fortunate to have a wonderful spouse, but there are many people that are stay-at-home moms and dads, and their husband or wife, partner is out at work for 24 hours on a shift and comes home, and immediately the stay-at-home person says, "I've been with the kids 24 hours, or I've had the pets for 24 hours. Here you go. I'm taking a break." And we forget. The person that's just come home from a shift has possibly been up all night, as we've said before, maybe has seen some bad stuff on some calls that night, maybe had some arguments with their officers, maybe had some fights with the crew, maybe had bad traffic on the way home. We don't know what the shift entailed. So while we do keep in contact with our significants throughout the day or a night when they're at shift work, we don't necessarily know what has, occurred during the entire shift. So when that person comes home, what would you recommend you do in regards to taking the children and saying, "They're yours now. I've had them for 24 hours"? Or how would we create a good dynamic for allowing the transition of coming home to family and the next step of life?
Well, and a couple of important parts is that, Glenn and I are not a perfect anything. I mean, we certainly have our problems and issues and, fights and disagreements. So let's be clear about that. But we are, very steady most of the time. And I am grateful for that. I was home for 2 years when we had our daughter. So we had two kids under 3, and Glenn went back to work after 2 weeks. Thank you, paternity leave of the United States of America. And so, I was home by myself a lot with 2 kids. My second child did not sleep through the night till she was almost a year and a half,
Mm.
which, just is what it is. And our son was 4 weeks early. So we were like waking him up a bunch to feed him and things like that. So that was its own set of fun. So, Glenn would come home and I would be dead from the day, or 24 hours or 36 hours. But I am a good person to think of the greater good, not the greater good of the universe, though I do try to think about that too, but sort of the greater good of the moment. So I'm like, okay, I can sit here and feel bad about it. I was lucky enough to not have postpartum depression. So when it's time for Glenn to get home, I'm going to go for a walk. So that way, like I would go for a walk with the kids, or we would go outside to the playground, or like just be out so he could come home and it's quiet. Our kids, we didn't have colicky children, so they didn't scream all the time. So it wasn't this loud sort of kind of household. But, would try to give him a minute to come home and sort of get it together and take a shower and change his clothes and whatever. But we were always a sort of a busy family of like going to the science center or going to the zoo or going to take a walk or going to the nature center or, going to meet a friend or go to a play date or get in a sensory table or whatever. And we would try to sort of do that. I would do that for him because I was the one who was, working part-time at the time. But, it's hard. I don't want to give advice to anybody. You have to do what sort of makes sense to you. But I do think it's important to sort of think about like, this is just one blip in time. And so when you're having a hard moment or a hard day or a hard night, it's not really about you. It's sort of like what the experience, like your dog was throwing up all night or your kid was throwing up all night or your, elderly mom needed help or something. It's just like one moment. And so if you can kind of existentially think about it like this moment really, really, really sucks and I can't do anything about it except go move forward. And so just put your head down and move forward and this too shall pass. I mean, there's very few moments that it won't pass. When my mom was sick for a year and Glenn's dad was sick for a year, it was really, really hard. All of it was hard, but this too shall pass and they both passed away. And I don't mean that this too shall pass, that they'll pass away, but it's just a moment of hard. And at the end, can you look back and say, I did the best I could. And I feel good that I did that. I feel like of all the bad that we've had or all the hard that we've had or all the moments of, crying or upsetness or people passing away that I and Glenn both look back and say, we did the best we could. And that's all you can ask for from each other.
Yep. Every day is different. Every shift is different. Life brings different challenges. And you take it one day at a time and do the best you can.
Yep.
Good advice.
Yep.
Very good advice. Well, I thank you so much for coming out tonight to join me on this podcast. And I hope everybody listens to it and gets some advice from it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Make a perfect family. Oh, my pleasure. So until next time, see ya.